Welcome to Bashys Corner. This is a special program where we invite special personalities from Danish society to talk politics, culture, interculturalism, religion, sports, whatever issue we feel we can contribute to the Danish society. And we take often topics which mainstream media doesn't dare or doesn't want. And that is why we have a very special guest today, Lone Kühlmann. Everybody knows who you are. So it's
that's because I was in mainstream media.
Of course, that's why. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year.
Thank you, and you too.
So, as we know that you have been a very well-known journalist, author of many books, political commentator, and a public speaker for almost 50 years. I didn't want to say that.
I just turned 70.
Yes,
it's not a
so
secret.
Then you're younger than I am. But you are still going strong. What is the secret in this wonderful life you had?
Probably because I've been privileged enough to work with things that interest me. I worked in television, as you know, for many years, and when I stopped that, I was for 2 years editor-in-chief of a women's magazine, and it was very interesting, but I wasn't very good at it. And I found it extremely boring.
Okay.
And so I left, and then I thought maybe I could carve out a profession, an existence for myself without having an employer. I think for most journalists that's a secret dream.
But not all of them can do that.
No, but you have to remember that it was made very easy for me because at that time there was actually only one television channel. When I worked in television, there was only one channel. So if you were on the evening news every night, you became a well-known person, no matter if you qualified or not.
I wanted to ask you about this book of yours.
Yeah.
This is the latest wonderful book.
Thank you.
And the title,
It has to look easy.
Yeah, it has to look easy. So is it a continuation of your last book?
Yes, I wrote one book called For Better and Better, which was about my childhood, and this one is about my grown-up life, my professional life mostly.
So let's go back to your childhood.
Yeah.
Why did you want to write about your childhood?
I think, a lot of people like to write about their childhood, and some people, it's easier for some people than for others. And, at my age, it's natural to look back. And writing is, for somebody in my profession, a natural way to use what you see when you look back. And it sort of brings order in your life. You get a perspective. Oh, I understand myself a little better when I look at what happened then, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And also, I think the more serious the subject matter is, the lightly you have to treat it. So I try to make it entertaining, and it doesn't matter to me, or I prefer if it's funny, if people are amused, because I find that it's easier for me to understand my own mistakes when I can laugh at it.
Okay.
Instead of if somebody hates me over the head with an iron stick and tells me I'm a complete fool,
As
which I may be, but it's easy for me to realize this and to grow as a human being if I understand something by laughing at it.
So when you say that people like to write about their childhood, is it for themselves?
Yeah, I think for most people it's just for themselves.
Or could be that other can learn from that?
I think for most people, most people aren't able to get published even if they want to be.
That's true.
I'm fortunate in that respect.
But today we have internet. You
yeah,
can publish
sure.
your
But you
books.
see a lot of people writing about themselves on the internet.
Yes.
But I think, for a lot of retired people, it keeps your brain alive, and also you hope that your grandchildren would want to read it, which they probably won't. But I think it's actually there's research showing that it's quite healthy.
So did you had a beautiful, happy life, childhood?
Well, nobody has a completely happy life, I don't think, unless they're in deep denial.
Okay.
But I would certainly say that I had a very happy childhood. But I often think when I hear the discussion about, for instance, young Muslim women, girls in this country, that, you know, they're subject to much the same things that I was growing up. There were very strict rules for girls. And it was certainly very, very different what boys were allowed to do and what girls were allowed to do. And there was this documentary recently about a very young girl who crept out of the window to be with her boyfriend, and she played hooky from school and stuff like that. No, my father wouldn't beat me up or anything or lock me up, but my parents would be shocked beyond belief if I played hooky from school in order to be with a boyfriend. That sort of thing was simply not done.
But this is a very important thing what you are saying, and I hope that our viewers will also understand that the society, the Danish society as it's today, has developed over the number of years.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest, greatest shame that could befall a family was if a daughter got pregnant out of wedlock.
So people,
and this is 50 years ago.
Only 50 years ago.
Yeah. So well, 50 years is a long time.
That's true, but in the history
to me, it was just the other day.
In the histories of countries, it's a very short period. You know.
Yeah.
So you mean that we should not compare the Danish society norms with the norms of some ethnic minority groups?
Well, yeah, we can compare all we want, but we have to realize what is going on and what has been going on. I mean, I am a product of this time I've been living in.
Yes.
And I had au pairs, Danish au pairs, nannies for my 3 sons when they were growing up, and my husband and I were both working around the clock, so this was necessary. And they lived with us, and they had graduated from high school when they came to stay with us, and we're all around 18. And I said, I will not, you can do whatever you want, I'm not messing with your private life, but I won't have your boyfriends in my house.
So you had rules?
Yeah, I had rules. And my kids, I kept my kids very strict, even though they were boys, because that's from a philosophy that a parent should know what their kids are doing. And also because I thought that if you have very strict rules, it's easier for them to sort of oppose them. If you have a very, very loose rules around the house, they have to get all the way out there in order to be in opposition. It was very easy to be in opposition to me because I had very strict rules.
Okay, so let's get back to your professional career. Of course, you had a very great life. So I want to start with your career when you worked at Radio Denmark's technical department in 1965. Yeah. I came to Denmark after 5 years. What did you do there?
Well, you know, I was an au pair actually in the States.
Okay.
When I was 18.
Wow.
From when I was 18 to I was 19. And I came back and I wanted to work with journalism. But then you had to go to be an apprentice at a newspaper. And it was a completely closed society. You had to know somebody.
Denmark and close society.
Please. And you had to know somebody. Your father was in the press, or your uncle, or somebody. And I knew nobody in the press. There was nobody in my immediate or enlarged family that had anything to do with press. Okay. So my mother finally saw an ad in a paper saying that the technical department was looking for young women, and they had to be used to travel, they had to be worldly, know languages, all that sort of thing. And my mother said, look, that must interest you. She was desperate. And so I applied for this job. And then when I was hired, I realized that we were actually hired in order to suppress the wages for the men, because they were all trained technicians. And you really didn't need all these trained technicians, because actually most of the job consisted in pushing a button when somebody said start. So
women were getting less money than men?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. This was in 65, we were paid at dirt. So I became a very active what would you call it? I became very active in labor matters because I realized that if we became members of some sort of union, we would immediately get much higher wages. And this is a long story. I won't bore you with that.
We'll come back to it.
But anyway, I got the wages raised, but I'd left the firm by then.
You're born in Copenhagen. You're raised here, but. Interesting enough that you started, or you chose this Lowlands Venstreblad to work. How come a small publication?
Because they were the ones who wanted to hire me. What happened was I worked, when I was in the technical department, I worked very closely with the journalists from the TV news.
Okay.
And they thought that I was a funny little thing and probably not stupid. So, and when they heard that I actually wanted to become a journalist, they said to wherever they came from, we have this bright young thing here, you should hire her. And they did that.
And then you went directly to
Columbia
University.
Then I got connections. I had no connections and I got connections and I was on my way.
But then you went to Columbia, to New York.
Yes, whenever I don't know what to do, I go to New York.
Really? Okay. How was that?
That was a very formative experience. Okay. I had graduated as a journalist, and I felt that you have to realize I was under the old way of training journalists, as I said, as a trainee at a newspaper, apprentice actually. I felt that I desperately needed to know something more theoretically, something more basic. I knew how to be fast. I knew how to fill up a page in no time, and I knew to see the big and the small, and that sort of thing.
But then you moved to TV.
Yeah, but that was after I graduated from Columbia. Yeah.
Why to TV?
Because actually I thought when I came home from Columbia in 1971, I thought I would be a big star at Politiken or Berlingske or something, and they weren't hiring. They
were not hiring?
No, they were not hiring. So I stood there with all my talents and my master's degree. So I went back to actually the radio news first. I worked in radio news for 2 years, which were very happy years. I love radio.
Okay.
And then I was hired by television news.
It was a black and white television.
It was black and white, yeah. But I was actually on air the first night we went into color.
Color, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was in 78.
So that was a part of history.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I understand that TV journalists in those days, they were very hardworking and took pride in their professional integrity. And today they use social media, internet. What happened to that integrity? What happened to that journalism, professional journalism?
I call it the CNN effect. Because when I worked as a foreign correspondent, traveled all over the world. Sometimes I wasn't in touch with my office for a week because I was out where the stories were happening, seeing real people, how they were living, filming, interviewing, reporting. And then I came back and edited it and put it on the air. Anyway, CNN I think started in 1980 and they started the kind of journalism where you can never be more than 30 minutes away from a satellite because you have to be on air constantly.
On 24 hours.
And now we have all these platforms. I mean, you have radio, you have the internet, you have television, and you have now all the time.
So it's a competition, breaking news.
And it's all about being first. It's not about being best. It's not about being right. It's about being first. And that's an international phenomena. It's not at all special for Denmark.
But some TV
and also we are all influenced by the American way. If it bleeds, it leads.
It leads, that's true. In many surveys in Denmark, also internationally, public has very little trust in journalists. In UK, only 3%. In United States, only 25% people trust.
25?
Yes.
I'm amazed.
It's too much?
Yeah, much too much. But they do have excellent journalism.
Yes.
They do have. Also, we have excellent journalism. Also, we have lousy journalism. And this is true for
But then why people don't trust journalists?
Because they themselves choose lousy media. People are watching, pardon my French, words I wouldn't take into my mouth. People are choosing to watch lousy programs, and then they complain that they're lousy. Well, They could, you know, something like on television, for instance, DR1, the radio program, has something like 7% of all the listeners. 7%, I think. You mustn't crucify me if it's only 5. But my friends think that everybody listens to Radio 1 because they listen to Radio 1. But very few people do. They listen to commercial channels or they listen to
commercial programs.
Yeah.
In 2011, Pew Research Center in USA, they found out that 42% Americans think that media hurts democracy.
Well, you know, I never trust American statistics.
Okay.
Because
Pew is very respected.
Well, I think sort of 80% of Americans believe that God solely, single-handedly created the world. So I think we should just leave them alone.
Okay. Coming back to Denmark, we pride ourselves on the issue of freedom of expression, you know, freedom of speech. While the constitution, Danish constitution says, freedom of expression under responsibility.
Yeah.
So why many journalists do not write or say things or make program under responsibility? Why we have forgotten the other part?
Are you you are saying that people write without taking responsibility?
They do many times. For example, about these cartoons, many other time, you know, that responsibility, when you have power, as a journalist, I mean, people read what you write.
Let's not go into the cartoons. It's
no, but responsibility.
We've sort of been there.
Okay.
But I think that we should have freedom of expression.
Absolutely.
With responsibility. Yes. I absolutely concur with that.
Okay.
I think you're right that some people don't respect that, but there are, you know, professional journalists and non-professional journalists, and there are good papers still.
Okay,
not very many.
Okay, let's get back to
and there are some not very good papers.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the gender equality issue, which you are a great, you know, exponent of that. In Danish media, the figures show that 8 out of 10 top posts in media are men. And we talk about gender equality in Denmark, and we talk about women power, you know. Why is still men-dominated area in media?
Because I think the media reflects the society in general. And
so
that's the way it is in general.
Our society is men-chauvinistic?
Well, look at the news. Count how many women you see in the news and count how many men. And tell me what that tells you. Of course the media reflects society. Of course they do. And we can point to I don't even know how many women are in this government we have now. And I don't remember the percentage of women in parliament. But I do know that when the serious decisions are taken in business and in politics, the women are sort of sent out to get the coffee.
One of your friend, Birgit Seymour, she wrote a thesis.
I actually don't know Birgit
You
Seymour.
don't know? No. Okay, I thought she would. She wrote a thesis in 76, women in the media.
Yeah.
She said that women were always secondary characters. They should preferably not exceed 35 years, and they should look exceptionally good and have a sweet, smiling appearance. Is it still the same?
It's still absolutely. There are a few exceptions. But I remember actually a case that must have been back in the 90s, but it hasn't changed that much. That's an American case. An anchor, a female anchor who was 36, shockingly old. She was fired from her station. This was in the American South. I think it was in, I don't know, Tennessee or somewhere. She was fired from her television station with the argument she was too old, not pretty enough, and didn't have respect for men. I love that.
That part is okay, not the respect for men. Okay.
And she was fired, and she took them to court.
Yeah.
And the television station won the case because they said it is a paradigm or it's an issue in television that the host is good looking.
Well, good looks.
I don't think such a case could be won in Denmark,
no.
But it's still lying there. I mean, you don't have to scratch deeply in anybody.
No, okay.
Not women either.
No.
Lots of women just if you scratch a bit, really deeply think that men are probably more to be trusted than women.
Hallelujah.
When it comes to taking serious decisions.
Okay.
They know that they are not other places,
So
like we've just seen in Cologne and places like that.
So now I want to come back to a very important issue, or very interesting issue. You have interviewed phenomenal historical personalities: Olof Palme, Reagan, Begin, Hillary Clinton, Sean Connery, Barbara Cartland. My God.
Actually,
who impressed you the most?
Oh, that's difficult to say. I think I was very impressed with Olof Palme. He was
Me too.
a magnetic personality, and extremely bright, and had an enormous sense of humor. But I think the one I remember the best was probably Sean Connery, because he was so different from everybody else I was used to interviewing. Yeah. And I had never done a celebrity interview in my life. That wasn't my line. And then I was asked to go to London and interview him in connection with the film Never Say Never Again.
Oh yeah, okay,
yeah.
That's one of the first ones. Yeah.
No, it's one of his last ones.
Oh, his last one. Yeah. Okay.
He had been out of the Bond
That's
business,
true, yeah,
and then he came back.
True.
And he didn't have much hair, so he had a toupee on his
okay.
head. And he was 52. And you know how these film star interviews, they hire a suite in the Dorchester, in this case, or some other fascist Nazi hotel, and you have all these celebrity journalists sitting there waiting in a suite next to him, and being fed drinks and whatever, and to create a positive atmosphere. And I thought, this must be so boring for him. And I felt I have to sort of be different from the rest of them in one way. So some Spanish journalist, she was complaining that she was last because then she would miss her plane or something. Oh. And I said, oh, that's terrible for you. You can take my place and I'll take yours, because I felt he would probably sort of see the end of this boring long day with these boring journalists. So I was the last one, and I started by telling they had a one camera thing that was sort of over the shoulder of the interviewer, so just to show. I said, no, can't be like that, because I'm just as famous as he is in Denmark.
Okay.
I have to sit next to him. Yeah. And so he sort of woke up. He said, what is going on here? And I told him that I'd never interviewed a film star before, and that I came just from Israel, which was true, where I'd interviewed Menachem Begin, and that impressed him no end. He wasn't used to that style of journalism. So we got along famously. And it was funny. I started out by asking him if how he kept the hair on under all the water, since it was a toupee. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, it was nailed to my head.
Oh, it was nailed to his head. Okay. You have also written many books, but one of the books which I noticed is a very interesting topic. Is about with or without headscarf. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I
work a lot as a moderator, and I've been moderating a lot of meetings. I think you have probably been in some of them, about what we call the cultural meeting between different cultures. Sure. And I felt so much nonsense was being said from all sides. Sure. People said so much baloney. They didn't know what was religion, what was culture, what was bad habits.
Exactly. Thank you.
and I felt I need to know more about this subject if I'm to take myself seriously. And so I looked around, and my husband is an anchor at Radio News. Okay. And he felt the same need. So we looked around, where could we go? And we picked Syria. In the first place, because in Syria they actually have in the constitution equal rights between men and women. And it's a non-religious society. Officially, it's in the constitution. And also there's a Danish institute where we could stay.
That's true.
So we stayed there, and we went there, and it was in March 2003, so we were there when the invasion in Iraq took place. Oh. And let me tell you, the invasion in Iraq was such a shock. We woke up one morning and heard that we were now part of a warmongering nation. It was a shock. I never thought I should live to experience that.
We still are.
Yeah, I know, but now we've sort of gotten used to it, haven't we?
I know, but we shouldn't.
No, I agree perfectly.
And there has been major changes in Danish society, and you of all the people know very well. Are you satisfied with this direction we are going?
I have never in my life been satisfied with the direction in which we're going. I don't think anybody has, and I think we have to remember that. I always say to myself and to anybody else, whether they want to listen or not, that things go in circle. Things go in circle.
Okay.
And when things are going your way, you're just so busy enjoying it, you never pay attention to anything else. And if they oppose you, you really forget that it's going to change again. I think what's happening now everywhere in the world is awful. But still, I read the statistics, and actually we have more democracy now in the world than we had 25 years ago. And we have more women getting an education, and we all know, because this has been proved over and over again, a better education for women means a better life for the family.
Sure.
And I remember when I was very young, this was in '75, when I was at the first UN Women Conference in Mexico. I interviewed a wonderful Danish economist who, she's dead now, but she was the person, her name was Esther Bostrup. She was the person in the world who knew most about women in the developing countries, from a statistical point of view. This was the first time I heard about female circumcision. I had never heard about it before. And it wasn't a subject that was allowed on the official conference. You mustn't mention it. Because it was part of people, it was only at NGO conference you could talk about it. It was part of these countries' cultural heritage. I couldn't believe it. And this woman, Esther Bostrup, said on air into my microphone, she said, I am so fed up with these countries talking about their cultural heritage. Whichever cultural heritage they had is gone long ago. And there is not a man in a developing country who wouldn't exchange his cultural heritage for a color TV.
Well, okay, the last question I wanted to ask you, do you think that Denmark one day, we have come full circle, would be a truly intercultural society?
No, because I think I don't think there is such a thing as cultures being equal. No. Look at the States now. Yeah. Look at the States. Look what they are putting up more limits for people than anywhere else. Is not USA, but we call it a multicultural society.
Intercultural.
Yeah, intercultural. Okay. I think that there will always be one stronger culture than the other. We always hear about the Arabs and the Spaniards, the Christians in southern Spain, but when you look at it, it's really not true. It's within a framework you allowed, the major power allowed the lesser power to be there on certain conditions, but there's always one culture that's stronger than the other. I'm sorry.
No, but you are very right that culture, some are up and down. And I hope and I'm sure that our viewers would have learned a lot from what Lone said about society, about journalism, and that we have come full circle. Until then, take good care of yourself and see you next time.